Help Me Rhonda Now is dedicated to awakening hearts, minds, and most especially spirit to the unique power that resides within each one of us. So, how do we live an empowered life in these unprecedented times? With fear, uncertainty, anxiety, and perhaps anger surrounding us. The truth is, we have an opportunity during these chaotic times to come together and share what's on our minds and in our hearts in new and powerful ways. The good news is that this time is a gift, a chance to pause and hit the reset button. The time is now to thrive and not merely survive. The time is now to live the life we desire, to stop settling for less and living life in default mode. If you're ready to celebrate life, let's talk. Contact me, Rhonda Farah, at Help Me Rhonda Now, 949-527-1574. That's 949-527-1574. Or email me at rhonda@helpmerhondanow.com. Rhonda@helpmerhondanow.com. And in the meantime, have a magnificent and a healthy day every day.
Addiction doesn't have to destroy your life forever. You may be lost now, but you can change things with the right help. At Elevate, we empower you to take control of your life. Our evidence-based approach to addiction focuses on the whole you, mind, body, and spirit. Rediscover who you are in a healthy and positive environment. Rebuild your body through fitness and nutrition. Reconnect to your life's purpose. We want to help you before it's too late. Call today.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Farah, and welcome to Help Me Rhonda Now. Our program is dedicated to awakening hearts, minds, and most especially spirit to the unique power that resides within each one of us. With that power, we have the opportunity to both choose and create the life that we desire, the life that we truly want, versus settling for anything less and living life in default mode year after year. Today on our program, I have a special guest. Her name is Angie Manson, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Elevate Addiction Services. She's a very special person, and I am honored to have her on our program today. So a little bit about Angie, and then I will let her introduce herself. From low-income housing to CEO of Elevate Addiction Services, Angie Manson started using drugs and alcohol at the tender age of 11 years old. Growing up in the 24-hour town of Reno, Nevada, she had easy access to substances, which led her down the road of addiction. An intervention by her family on her 16th birthday landed Angie in jail again, followed by her first experience in a treatment center. Instead of getting clean and sober, Angie learned to manipulate the system. And at age 18, with no one to hold her accountable or bail her out, her addiction and criminal behavior worsened until she was facing a 10-year prison term. Due to a compassionate judge that was himself in recovery, Angie was sentenced to treatment instead. A couple of months in, she started working and giving back. For the first time in her life, she developed a passion for giving back to others and realizing her true purpose. Even after completing the program, Angie continued to work in rehab, both to gain more sober time and to give back to society. After completing 3 years of probation and working full-time in treatment, that same judge erased all of her criminal record and gave her a completely clean slate to start a new life. Angie has found her true passion and purpose, which is to help others who are struggling with addiction. And she is grateful to be putting them on the path to live their life as well as her true calling. As the CEO of Elevate Addiction Services, the only drug rehab in the country to have a CrossFit gym, Angie is passionate about health and fitness. She is the host of the Elevate Experience podcast and a recent recipient of the Forbes Riley Outstanding Humanitarian Award. With Angie's leadership, Angie was nominated for and won the Excellence in Treatment Gold Award from Conquer Addiction. Without further ado, let me introduce Angie Manson. Angie, welcome to our show.
Thank you. And thank you, Rhonda, for having me. Hearing all that, I'm like, wow, there you go. That's the whole interview. That's amazing. Thank you. You make me sound very nice.
Well, no, you are very amazing. And so that was your professional, your broadcast bio, and very heartfelt as well. Let me ask you, we kind of know how you got into your profession, but in your words, what has brought you to do what you do?
So when I was growing up, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a mom, and that was about it. My mom was like a paralegal. My grandma was similar. So the women in my life didn't hold positions that were leaders or anything like that. I was really good at typing, so I thought that would be a path that I would go. And so I knew always, though, even through my using, I like to help people, like whatever I could do. If my friends were the ones throwing up, I'm the one helping them. I'm talking them off the ledge. I'm trying to assist in any way. And that always gave me a bit of purpose. Due to my low income, I felt like that was what I needed to do to sort of earn my keep with the people that I knew. And so it was interesting when I started the drug rehab. I couldn't afford the whole program. It was beyond my family's means to help me with that. And so only like a month or two in, I started having to work part of the time to earn my keep and the program. And that's where I kind of found, well, I kind of like this. This is kind of good, but it's just a means to an end. And you know, that was more the purpose. But by that point, and that was really deep in my addiction, I was very selfish and self-centered. So it took a lot of time to sort of pull me out of that and realize, actually, this is what you do. You love doing this. And so it wasn't for like the first year or so when I started going, actually, I really do like doing this. I really do get a lot out of this. I like showing other people the way. I like them coming to me and me having the answer to help them. And then just seeing the miraculous changes that I got to see on a daily basis. It all sort of aligned for me. Like, what else could I do? What else would I want to do? So I feel very fortunate that my path led me to my purpose. Sometimes I say, and it's not always right, that being a drug addict was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay. All right. I get that. So you went from going through the motions, so to speak, to get out of rehab and fulfill whatever you needed to fulfill because of what your judge pronounced sentence to you on. You went to sort of, it sounds as you're talking like you had this aha moment. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I definitely did. Like I said, I was a very sort of selfish person, and I was, you know, me, but my program's being held up. I don't want to wait for this person. I don't want to do this. And at that time, the executive director, you know, looked at me and said, you know what, you're the most selfish person he told me a few other words, which we were allowed to do back then. But he was very blunt. He was like my dad, so he could get away with this. And I put that in perspective. He was 50 years old. He'd been in the drug rehab field for 30 plus years. He was a recovering addict himself. And for him to call me the most selfish person he ever met, it was kind of like that shock that I needed to go, is that really you? Who are you? Mm-hmm. And I think from that point on, and it wasn't an immediate process, but I started maybe giving a little more and doing a little more and feeling and starting to realize how that actually made me feel when I learned how to selflessly give to another without how it would benefit me or hold me back.
Okay. All right. Wow. Okay. You know, you and I have had a couple of conversations about the Elevate program. What makes this program different from other means of rehab from addiction?
So the general rehab that you would go to these days is more than likely AA or NA based. And most times you'll go in on some street drugs or alcohol, and the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get loaded up on medication and you're going to go to meetings. And the first premise of the meetings is admit you're powerless. So for me, this was something that I struggled with, which is why that didn't work for me. You know, having to admit that you're powerless over something, admitting that you're the victim of a disease. These things, like for me, was like, well, what's the point of getting sober? If I'm powerless and I have this disease, then what's the point? So one thing we do right away is we take everybody off all the medications. They spend 7 to 10 days, whatever's safe, depending on what they're on, and we completely remove them from all medications. And then once they're off everything, then they do the rest of the program. So they're doing a program, a curriculum program with a start and a finish, completely clear-headed. And so that's a big part of it is, you know, we start preaching with positive psychology, with empowerment, with CrossFit, where you're working out, you're being put in a gym, you're getting those endorphins going, you're learning how to be healthy. Because the other thing that's different about Elevate is a lot of other rehabs, you sit around, dark room, smoke cigarettes, drink coffee, talk about our war stories, talk about how bad things were. You hear how other people were. You're like, well, I wasn't that bad, so maybe I really don't have that big of a problem. Like, we don't let you talk about it at all. You're not allowed to glamorize it. You're not allowed to glorify it. Like, we don't let people sit and just recount war stories because it can be triggering to other people for many reasons. And that's why there's a curriculum, and you get to work it out in your workbook. You get to read a bit, think a bit, write a bit. There's a lot of like self-finding that you're able to do, in addition to all the other parts of the program where you're working with each other and you're working with one-on-one counselor and you're doing your fitness and that sort of thing.
Okay. So within the industry, the rehabilitation industry, when it comes to drugs and alcohol addictions, it sounds like there have been some changes that have been occurring.
Absolutely. Like when I first started, and this was 27 years ago, it was mostly street drugs, some pills, so heroin, cocaine, crack, that sort of thing. We could safely, drug-free detox everybody off everything, minus the one or two extreme situations of alcohol or pills. Now, 90%, 95% of the people that come in are on such hard drugs or such an array of drugs or don't even know what drugs they're on. We literally have to medically bring everybody down in a safe way so they're not having seizures or going to the hospital. Like, the drugs have just gotten way bad as far as how harsh they are on you, but also how plentiful it is. And that's been a big change in the industry as well.
Okay. Wow. So from hearing you speak, I consider Elevate really state of the art with respect to where this rehab industry was and how it's come along for at least 27 years. And now what you have brought it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you have to, because there's no one size fits all. And also, having so many people go to rehab to get sober, like say you're an alcoholic, you go to rehab to get sober, you get put on like 4 different medications. Here's your Ambien, here's your anti-anxiety medication, here's your Suboxone, even though you weren't even an opiate addict. They medicate you up, and then once your 30 days is up and insurance quits paying, they send you out the door. And that's not really treatment. You're just kind of swapping addictions. And so I feel like very strongly in my heart, it is my duty to get people sober, let them see that they can function sober, and put them out there as examples of society of reformed addicts, because there's a stigma about being an addict. And I want to remove that, because some of the most amazing people fell down a wrong path, but you can get them back and they're just as good, if not better, than they've ever been with the right tools and the right treatment.
Yes, absolutely. Here we are still in chaotic and uncertain times. We had this thing called the global pandemic. And it's interesting to me, you managed to keep your business as what was referred to as an essential business. So how did you do that? And how did that actually come to pass in these uncertain times? You became an essential business.
Absolutely. It was tricky, no, there was no playbook to what happened last year. And certainly, as a parent, as a business owner, as an employer of 100 employees that are on the front lines, it
Mm.
was a little stressful. Like, what do we do? Do we have to quarantine everybody? Do we stop bringing people in? Do I stop telling my employees to come to work? And it's like, you know what? If people are going to need us now more than ever, like, what I cannot do is just shut down. What I need to do is what we're doing and more. And so we kind of, business as usual with, safety precautions in place,
Yes.
kept bringing people in. We became a safe place for people to be. People's addictions went down really fast. People home alone, like alcoholism, went through the roof. That was the first thing that happened, is the alcoholics just went like crazy. And older alcoholics. So we had a lot of like 20s and 30-year-olds putting their parents in with us, like, I don't want to worry about them, you guys fix them, and I know they're safe with you, kind of situations. Like, that was what we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we just continued to do business as usual. And we made our whole curriculum, like, we had just opened up our outpatient center in Tahoe. And then the pandemic hit literally the next week. Like, I ribbon cutting, and then I have to shut it down. So we quickly pivoted to making our outpatient virtual. And so people could stay at home who were afraid to, it didn't want to come out in the environment, and we did everything online. We made an online curriculum, we did Zoom meetings, we transitioned to give a lot of the program to people so that they could stay home in their safe environment, or if that was what they needed to do. And so that was one of the big things that we did that really helped, that will never change. Like, now that we have that, that'll stay in for forever. It just forced us to do it super fast, and I'm really glad it did, because we've had a huge success from doing that as well.
Well, you indeed are an essential business, especially in these chaotic pandemic times, which we're still not out of. So, have you seen any changes since now we're coming back to whatever normal is? What's going on with your business?
So in the beginning of the pandemic, I told you it was a lot of older alcoholics. As it's gone on, we've noticed a huge upsurge in fentanyl. Like, that's the new drug of choice. And if you know anything about fentanyl, it's extremely dangerous. It's like playing Russian roulette every time you do it. Yeah, there's the patches and the pills that you're taking, but it's also being laced into all of the other street drugs. So you have kids who are doing, ecstasy, like rave drugs, and not realizing it's being laced with fentanyl. And so what we saw last year was a spike in overdoses, suicides, a lot of that kind of stuff, which was the really bad part that came out of it. And I'm sure, as you know, and I don't need to tell anybody, mental health was at an all-time low with everything that people had to do just to sort of get through last year and this year. So that's a big thing. Like, I'm seeing, it's just a lot of fentanyl on the streets. It's really scary. I try to warn people. I try to warn kids. You think you're just taking like a rave drug, but you could die. It's like that serious.
All right, good point. Now, what advice would you give anyone considering rehab, or perhaps someone who has a loved one or a friend or knows of someone that would benefit from rehab? But how do you approach that? How do you do this, whether you want to do it personally or you want to invite someone to consider rehab?
I think it all depends on whether the person is ready or not. Like, if they're ready, then it's like go time. You get them in the car, you find a place, do your research, get them in a good place that fits with them. Don't just throw them somewhere. A lot of times you feel like backed into a corner because of the insurance you have, so you're limited on your options. But I would say call around and find something that's appropriate if they're ready. If they're not ready, you got to have hard conversations. I mean, it's life or death, and it's not a time to be soft. A lot of times that might include an intervention. A lot of times that includes an ultimatum, but you've got to be confident enough to take that step to try to save their life and get them at least a little bit willing, or get them on the phone with a counselor who can talk to them and help them determine whether they have a problem or they need help. But the best thing you could do is just reach out. Don't go through it alone, in either the addict or the loved one. Like, just reach out for some help.
Okay. All right. Well, you have enlightened me with respect to the subject of rehab, and that there is a totally different approach, and you are a state of the art approach. Um, and one thing really sticks out for me that you said, because I share that being in the transformation industry and helping individuals live an empowered life, regardless of situation or circumstance or event.
Mhm.
Um, you use the term one size does not fit all. And that is so true, regardless of the fact that we are not alone, because we are never alone. One modality, whether you call it treatment or you call it counseling, you call it coaching, whatever you call it, one size does not fit all. And that's extremely important for, especially for the client, not only for your success results as a business, but as your client and being of service to others. So with that said, what two things? How can our listeners get a hold of you and learn more about Elevate as well as your podcast? And what would you leave our listeners with today?
So the first thing I would say is, yeah, you are not powerless. You can change. There is change. You're not doomed to a life sentence if you have a problem with drug addiction. As far as like the individuality of our program, that's why we have the written curriculum where you can work through your own issues. Like addicts, like most people, are very stubborn and they don't respond to somebody saying, this is your problem, this is why you started, this is how it happened. It's just different for everybody. I mean, at the bottom, there's always a trauma. There's always something that occurred that set them on the path to, using drugs as a solution to handle or confront the trauma that they went through. So that would be the first thing. Like, let's handle that trauma, and then let's work on empowering the individual so that they can go out and tackle the world and not be rehabilitated, because rehabilitated means bringing back to a former state. We actually want them better than any state they've ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually have a benefit by having 1 to 2 months of just working on themselves and nothing else. That can put them ahead of people who've never even had a drug problem. Like, I've had so many parents tell me, like, I should do your program. There's so much in here for everybody, which is true. But, you spend that amount of time just soul searching on yourself with a guided shaman or person, you're going to be doing better than the majority of the world who doesn't look at that kind of stuff. So I would say, yes. The one amazing thing that happened for me during the pandemic was, again, with the pivoting, I started the Elevate Experience podcast so that we could, first of all, like, reach out to the world and say, here's what the Elevate program looks like. Like, hear from our counselor, hear from our family advisor, hear from a detox specialist. Give them transparency on what the program is. It's not a hidden thing. We're not doing anything that we would never tell anybody about. So that was the first part. But then we realized, okay, we can get through that pretty quickly. So now what do we do with it? And it's actually been amazing. We've been able to reach tons and tons of people out in the world that are also sober, who've overcome massive adversity, who's been with people who were addicts. And we have, like, literally every kind of perspective that you could get from addiction just by listening to the show. And I always love it when I hear, parents will hit me up on Instagram, like, I listen to your podcast every day. It's so good to know where my son is and know what's happening and who it's with. And it's reached people in different ways that I never could have imagined. But I find it to be really, hopefully, a lot of good content in the field. If you're looking for the podcast, it's called The Elevate Experience. It is major platforms. If you're looking for Elevate, it's www.elevaterehab.org. If you need help, it's 833-33-SOBER. Somebody's always standing by 24 hours a day to help anybody that needs help, as well as the chatting on the website if that's more comfortable for you. And then you can always find me at Angie.at.elevate on Instagram, and I'll communicate with you and help you in any way that I can as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Angie Manson, thank you for being on Help Me Rhonda Now, and thank you for sharing the services of Elevate, and thank you for reaching out to let people know that there is Elevate, and they are not alone. We have, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and take care.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.